answer them all offline. I'll send you an email with the answer to your question. But I'm going to keep plowing through here. The pro-labor executive orders, first I'll point out that a president can rescind a prior president's executive orders. And that's exactly what Mr. Obama did with a number of Bush's executive orders that were employer-friendly in the government contracting arena. But for the most part, as part of his early agenda, Mr. Obama included 4 executive orders relevant to federal contractors. In essence, they're listed here, and they're almost exactly what they say they are. The first one requires qualifying federal contractors to post a written notice advising employees of their rights to bargain collectively, engage in freedom of association, and designate a bargaining representative. The second one protects employees of predecessor contractors from termination by successors if they are qualified for the work, so they have a right of first refusal if the contractor changes, but the employees can stay on if they are qualified. The third one deals with economy and government contracting, and that one is a cut at labor issues, and in essence this one disallows any costs associated with the employer captive audience speeches under the federal cost reimbursement contracts. Again, this is where you have an organizing campaign and the employer does what we call the captive audience speech, explaining to employees why unionization is not a good idea in their case. And then the fourth one are the project labor agreements issues. This is for large-scale construction projects that's $25 million or more. And in essence, the order provides the executive agency administering the contract with the authority to require project labor agreements on those projects. Of course, there's been a tremendous amount of uproar from the merit shop contractors, but so far the PLAs are winning out here. Some additional changes for 2009 include the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009, the ARRA. I think anybody here with health insurance benefits understands that COBRA subsidies were created to enable terminated employees to maintain health insurance. That subsidy was to expire on December 31st, but was extended. I believe it was extended in, I don't remember if it was November or December, but it was pretty close to the deadline there. And I want to remind folks that this also applies to states with mini COBRA. And remember that Pennsylvania just implemented its own mini COBRA law in 2009. Some additional 2009 changes include EVerify, which is the internet-based system used by employers to verify if employees are authorized to work in the United States. As you can see, it can only be used to verify eligibility status. It may not be used to verify immigration status. It's voluntary for non-government contractors and mandatory for government contractors as of September 8th. And so there are some rules that apply to government contractors with respect to EVerify, and including certain provisions in their contracts. But for the most part, if you have a government contract that was awarded from September 8th forward, you are likely going to have the EVerify requirement in that contract. And so that gets us to 2010. Where are we headed? Here comes my forecast. Have a lot of things going on already in 2010, but let me mention the Employment Non-Discrimination Act of 2009. Recently I heard someone quip, is the end near? Well, I don't know. This thing has been rattling around for a long time. The law is intended to prohibit employers with 15 or more employees from discriminating or retaliating against actual or perceived gay, bisexual, or transgender employees or applicants, and it prohibits using an individual's sexual orientation or gender identity as the basis for employment decisions such as hiring, firing, promotion, or compensation. Interestingly, this act would provide employees with the opportunity to pursue many different types of claims due to discrimination, but it would not allow a disparate impact claim similar to the ones available under Title VII. So that's an interesting little quirk in that particular law. It hasn't passed yet, but we're going to continue watching it I think with the demise of some of the senators who were in favor of it, we might see this thing backburnered for yet another year. I think I've gone too far ahead. Let me, well, I'll just leave it there for now because we are moving forward here. Let me just quickly talk about the Equal Employment for All Act. That particular act is intended to reduce or prohibit the use of the Fair Credit Report. Pardon me, I confused myself. The Equal Employment for All Act would amend the Fair Credit Reporting Act and prohibit use of consumer credit checks against prospective and current employees as a factor in making adverse employment decisions. So basically, you know, we'd be without a lot of tools to determine whether somebody is an appropriate hire. There are some exceptions. For example, if the job involves national security, FDIC clearance, or positions of significant financial responsibility, such as bank managers, loan officers, or financial managers. But the bill would also prohibit employers from asking applicants to submit to voluntary credit checks. So watch out for that one. I think that one has an interesting likelihood of passing in some permutation. The next area of inquiry related to, several of them, the Title VII Fairness Act. It would amend the ADA and Title VII to delay the time period for filing charges. It's just another one of those statute of limitations extensions. We're also looking at the paid sick leave legislation law, and that's a fairly recent one that is called the Emergency Influenza Containment Act. It came up in November, and it would provide 5 paid sick days for workers who are sent home or directed to stay at home because of a contagious illness like H1N1. I'm going to move into some of the labor stuff because the slide is up here on the screen. But remember EVCA, or the card check legislation. That was number 1, 2, or 3 on Mr. Obama's legislative priorities list back last year. But with the economy crashing, it became wise to avoid passing this law because it would result in tremendous expenses to employers because of additional unionization activity and some of the other aspects of EVCA. We thought that EVCA would come back around in some permutation, and we've seen a lot of wrangling back and forth in Congress and outside of Congress. But I always like to ask the question, is EFCA DEAD? I don't know. I think it might be dying at this point. We might see some very watered down piece of that come up, but with Scott Brown's election, the Democrats really don't have the tools that they had to get this thing passed at first sight of a turning economy. So I think we'll just continue to watch EVCA. I think it's still a dangerous bill, and it's still there on the horizon, but I have a sense that it's going to be in the middle to back burner for quite some time. And you can see, too, that because EVCA may not have had the opportunity to pass, 2 additional union-friendly pieces of legislation are out there, the Labor Relations First Contract Negotiations Act and the NLR Modernization Act. In essence, the first one requires mediation and arbitration after a specific amount of time, and the second one would require equal access by both employers and unions to employees prior to election. And now you can bet that the other 2, the Secret Ballot Protection Act and the Truth in Employment Act, those are employer-friendly, and in essence they are what they say they are. One would be to protect the secret ballot process with respect to union organizing campaigns, and then the second one is really about salting. And salting is when an individual takes a job or applies for a job with the sole purpose of organizing an employer's workplace. In this case, it would permit employers to determine or actually refuse to hire somebody or give them the ability to fire people who engage in salting.